Greetings and salutations to those who rule! Welcome back to Just Norris. Today we're doing another 100% review, and this time we're looking at Those Who Rule, a tactical indie RPG made by one solo developer called Eldin Turulja. Now, for the sake of not butchering the name every 2 minutes, we're just gonna call him Eldin. And honestly, what he created here is quite impressive. Those Who Rule is a tactical turn-based RPG inspired by games like Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics, and similar strategy-focused RPGs. It has its jank, it has its rough edges, and it definitely has moments where you can feel that it's an indie project made by a small team, or in that case, basically one man.
See to his wounds, the general story is far from over. He'll have a part to play coming months.
But underneath that roughness, there is a surprisingly strong tactical experience and a generally interesting story, and a game at that. If you've enjoyed this kind of genre, it definitely deserves your attention. The story follows 3 fresh, unproven recruits who suddenly find themselves caught in a web of betrayal, conspiracy, revolution, and a political conflict between 2 major factions. You lead a growing band of heroes through difficult tactical battles, master their abilities, build their classes, forge better equipment, and try to survive long enough to understand what actually is happening behind the scenes. The real question is simple: will you unravel the conspiracy driving the conflict, or will you become consumed by it? So let's dive into it. Gameplay. The gameplay is where Those Who Rule shines the brightest. At its core, it is a tactical turn-based RPG where positioning matters, planning matters, and bad decision can absolutely punish you.
Oh, this is bad. This is actually very bad.
This is not one of those games where you just throw on your strongest characters forward and hope the numbers carry you through. You need to think, you need to understand your enemy, the front line, and who to tank, who to heal, how to flank, and who can finish off enemies, and also who should absolutely not be standing in the open getting slapped by 3 enemies at once. The combat uses a weapon advantage system that works almost like rock, paper, scissors. Different weapon types interact with each other different ways, and understanding that system is important if you want to control the battlefield properly. But it's not only about weapons. Every character also comes with its skills, classes, and progression choices.
What about the Warhammer? What can you do? Penetrate, crush, and armor bait.
As your character level up, they eventually unlock new class options around level 10 and level 20. You can promote them into a more advanced class, giving them new passive abilities and active skills, and a stronger identity to your group. This is where the game becomes really interesting. Because your character are not just blank chess pieces, they slowly become specialized tools in your army. One character might become your aggressive frontline bruiser, another become your reliable healer, another might become your precise damage dealer who finishes off enemies at just the right moments. And the way character level up is the most charming system in the game. So if they get attacked, they gain XP. If they block something, they get XP. If they do the killing blow, they get an extra amount of XP. Support, heal, and so on. Basically, your character always gets rewarded by participating in the combat actively in one way or another. So you're not just running numbers in the background, you're actively shaping each character through their actions in combat, and then there's also the stat growth system. So when your character levels up, there's a percentage-based chance that the certain stat will improve. Sometimes you get a beautiful level up where multiple useful stats increase, and you feel like the gods themselves have blessed your little murder machine. Other times, the level up is a bit more modest and, well, maybe just your HP bar goes up by 1. But the randomness adds also to the flavor, and it makes your character feel slightly different from run to run. It gives the progression a small amount of tension, because every level up could be great, average, or slightly disappointing. And in a tactical RPG, that works. The battles themselves can become very intensive, especially in higher difficulties. Flanking matters, backstabbing matters, holding a proper frontline matters, protecting weaker characters matters. You're constantly trying to create a clean formation while the enemy is trying to break it apart. That creates a very satisfying tactical cocktail, especially when you start moving units, checking ranges, compare weapon matchups, planning damage, and try to solve the battlefield like a violent little puzzle. And when it works, man, it feels great. Not to the biggest downside in terms of the gameplay category. And it's not the combat itself, it's the inventory management. The inventory and equipment system are functional, but they can be tedious. It takes too much time clicking and scanning through all the menus, and too much back and forth to figure out who is equipped with what, who needs to upgrade, and who should be forged or getting some new item, optimizing your group. The game has gear progression, crafting, forging, which is a good concept, but the quality of life there of that system could be better. Because of that, you're sometimes finding the menu not your enemy. And this is where some of the solo developer limitations become visible. The core systems are there, the depth is there, the tactical foundation is strong, but usability could use more polish. Still, when I look at the full gameplay experience, especially considering this is an indie title and essentially a solo developer project, I think the gameplay deserves a strong score. So for gameplay, I give Those Who Rule a solid 4 out of 5. Story. The story is actually what pulled me into the game in the first place. Those Who Rule has a political conflict at its center that immediately gives the game more weight than just, "Hey, here's the bad guy, go stab him." You're caught between Fern and the Orokin Kingdom, with rebellion, reform, succession, betrayal, conspiracy, and all pushing against each other. You're not just fighting random battles on a map, you're slowly being dragged into a larger conflict where multiple parties have their own goals, their own agendas, and their own reasons to use you, manipulate you, or remove you from the board entirely. The setup works really well. The game gives you the feeling that you are a small piece of something much bigger, and at the start, someone with limited control, but over time, your choices, your alliances, and your survival begins to matter more and more. I really enjoyed that. The main story has a strong direction, it keeps moving forward, it gives you enough mystery to want to know the next chapter, go through the next battle, and it made me curious about who was telling the truth and who was lying, and who was using whom in the end. And at its best, the writing does land emotionally. There are moments where you smile, there are moments where you laugh, and there are moments where I cry like a little baby. And for tactical indie RPG, that is not something I take for granted. However, the story presentation does have limitations. Most of the narrative is delivered through 2D conversations between characters. Sometimes it's two characters talking, sometimes a larger group. And while this is a completely understandable choice for an indie game, it also creates one big challenge. How do you give every character enough screen time without turning the game into a wall of text? And this is where Those Who Rule struggles a little. Some characters are introduced, but then they just pushed aside and never to be seen. You can talk to characters in cap battles after and get some information and flavor text and background behind them, but not at all that feels necessary.
Russell? Who is that? Russell Crowe? Are you not entertained? It kind of reminds me of that.
Some of the side conversations feel like filler episodes in an anime. You know, the kind where the main plot is moving forward, the stakes are rising, and they're just getting intense, and then suddenly get a smaller character moment that is not bad, but also not really pushing anything forward. It gives the character maybe a tiny bit of screen time, but that doesn't always feel strongly connected to the main arc. It's not terrible. Optional flavor is not a bad thing, but in a game where the system around inventory equipment could have used more attention, I sometimes found myself wondering if those resources might have been better spent elsewhere. The main story is strong, the political conflict is intriguing, the betrayal and faction drama works, the central narrative has momentum, but the side stories and camp conversation are more uneven. Some are nice, some are forgettable, some feel like they're there because the game wants every character to have a moment, even if that moment doesn't, always add much to it. So for the story, I give Those Who Rule a strong 3.5 out of 5. Gore, aka game music. But as a rule, this is probably the category where I have the least to say about it. The music fits the atmosphere, it works nicely in the background, it fills the silence during battles, menus, conversation. It never felt completely out of space or place, and it does help the game feel more complete. But it doesn't really stand out at all. Luckily, it doesn't have that feeling of, damn, I have to listen to this track again. It does its job, and that's okay. They're not bad, they're not distracting, they're not annoying, but they're also not exceptional. Therefore, I give music a slightly below average note of 2.5 out of 5. It works, it fits, it supports the game, but it does not elevate the experience in any major way. Graphics and visuals. Visuals are an interesting category because Those Who Rule has two different visual sides. One side you have the character art, portraits, and the story presentation, and I actually like that direction quite a lot. The character art has that anime, manga-inspired style, but it does not go too far into the exaggerating fantasy nonsense, like the big boobas and big booties that you have in the Eastern industry. Instead, the art style feels more grounded. The characters are recognizable, they have strong silhouettes, they stand out from each other, they fit the darker political fantasy tone of the story. There's a grimness to the world, but it's not overdone. It does not feel like the game is trying too hard to be edgy. It has a serious atmosphere, and it still leaves room for character personality. Now, the actual gameplay visuals are more modest. The combat presentation uses a simpler style with voxel-like graphics and practical battlefield readability. It's not beautiful in the traditional sense. It's not a game you show someone because the environment looks super breathtaking, but it does its job. You can understand the battlefield, see who is where, recognize weapon types, follow the combat. It's enough visual feedback to understand what's happening during combat. And for tactical RPG, readability matters more than pure beauty. The game does not need to be visually stunning to work, it needs to be clear, it needs to be communicating tactical information, and it needs to make the battle be understandable. And in that sense, it succeeds. So if we would be judging this wholly and only on the battlefield graphics, I would probably give it a visuals around a 2 out of 5. But because the character art, the hand-drawn direction, the overall visual identity of the cast are much more stronger, I have to raise this score. The art direction gives the game personality, the characters are memorable, the portraits and story visuals help sell the world and the drama, so for the visuals overall I give Those Who Rule a good 3.5 out of 5. Conclusion. So where does that leave us with Those Who Rule? For me, Those Who Rule is quite an indie gem. It's not perfect, it has jank, rough edges, quality of life issues all over the place, inventory management can be tedious, music is just there, and the visuals during gameplay are functional rather than impressive. But the heart of the game is strong. The tactical combat is generally fun, the difficulty, especially in higher settings, can become intense in a very satisfying way, the class progression gives you character identity, the level up system makes every action feel meaningful, and the core loop of fighting through the battles just to unlock the next story generally is compelling. The story gives you strong central conflict between major factions in turmoil, you are caught between political pressure, betrayal, rebellion, and reform, and you're constantly trying to figure out who to trust, what side you're actually on, and whether the people around you are allies, enemies, or maybe something completely else. And that basically kept me going. Not just the battle, not just the progression, but both the combination of it all. The game managed to make me want to win the next fight because I wanted to see what happens next, and that's a very good sign. I'm also generally curious about the sequel. I want to see how Eldin improves in this foundation. I want to see whether the next game expands the systems, improves the inventory and equipment flow, and maybe even carries over decisions or consequences from the first game, because the foundation is absolutely there. And if you're into games like Fire Emblem, Final Fantasy Tactics, or in general tactical RPGs, where positioning, classes, character growth matters, then Those Who Rule should be definitely on your watch list. It's not a flawless, but it is a game with identity. It's a game with ambition, clear passion, and considering it comes from a solo developer, that deserves respect. So my final verdict for Those Who Rule is a strong 3.5 out of 5. Not perfect, not polished in every corner, but absolutely worth an experience if you love tactical RPGs. Hope you enjoyed our deep dive into 100% review of Those Who Rule. If you enjoyed this video, do not forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment because it helps the channel for free and tells, the ancient algorithm that we still exist. And of course, let me know if you have played Those Who Rule, what choices you made, and whether you are also keeping an eye on the sequel. That was all for now. Thank you kindly for watching, and ciao for now.